Hey, what's up guys? This is Anand from Kratz Infotech NG and I welcome you to this short video tutorial on Jenkins continuous integration. In this video, I'll be demonstrating a setup to integrate Jenkins CA server with the BitBucket repository using Webhook callback mechanism. In case you're not aware, Git version control provides two kinds of hooks, one on the client side and the other one on the server end. Webhook is a server-side hook which is used to notify interested listeners whenever there's a change in the Git code repository. In this demo, I will make use of the server-side webhook provided by BitBucket to trigger a Jenkins job whenever there is a code push to the repo. And this, in turn, will pull the latest code from the repository, build it, and execute a simple Java class. This demo can be extended to execute various build targets such as packaging your application, deploying it on a live server, execute various automated tests, and notify select users of the test results or breakages. The essence of continuous integration practice is the mandate for developers to check in code to shared repositories several times a day. Each check-in gets verified by an automated build process, allowing teams to detect problems early. Considering the fact that most of the development teams in recent times follow some or the other form of agile practices, the benefits of identifying breakages or defects at an early stage is immense. Of course, for this model to be more successful and effective, the automated testing and the test percentage coverage must be extensive. More the coverage and the automation, better the results. For my demo, I will be using a Git repository hosted on the BitBucket cloud server, where I have my developer account set up. Other than BitBucket, GitHub, GitLab, and GitStack are other popular Git servers, and they too can be used in a similar way to connect to Jenkins, but with some minor tweaks in the configuration. For a CI server, I have a local instance of Jenkins running on my laptop, which is a Windows 10 box, and this server is running in my local home network having a private IP and so not exposed to the external world. There are two dependencies for establishing a connection between BitBucket server, which is hosted on the cloud, and my local Jenkins server, which is remotely running within my home network. First one, the Jenkins server would need to have a BitBucket plugin so that it can communicate with the BitBucket server. This is essential for the Jenkins server to listen to the webhooks. Second, since I have my Jenkins server running in my home network, I need a utility which will provision or expose the port that is running on my local Jenkins server to the external world so that BitBucket server can initiate a callback to it. Please note that you would need this only if your Jenkins server is not running on a publicly available IP address or a host name. I use this wonderful tool called ngrok, which will expose my local Jenkins server to the external world, and without this, BitBucket server will not be able to communicate with my local Jenkins instance. Using this tool is very easy, and you just need to download an exe, run it by specifying the port that you want to expose to the external world, and I will give you the details of this shortly. Okay, enough of all boring theory now. I very clearly explained what is the objective of my demo that I'm going to put up. Now let me just start getting into the details of my demo and put all the pieces that is required for coming up with the complete demo. The demo can be divided into three different tasks. The first one is related to BitBucket. I'm going to first create a very simple repository called Hello World, and I'm going to put it up on the BitBucket server. The second task, I'm going to put in a Jenkins job after that, which will point to this Hello World repository that is on the BitBucket and provide the credentials required to log into BitBucket, get all the source code from this particular repository onto the Jenkins workspace and build a particular project out there on Jenkins. So once tasks 1 and 2 are done, I'm going to finally put down webhooks and ngrok utility and ensure that I do a CI integration involving BitBucket and Jenkins. This will ensure that whenever there's a code check-in that's happening on the BitBucket repository, the Jenkins will automatically trigger a job which will pull down this contents of this repository and start building the task. Okay, First things first, the BitBucket setup. The prerequisite for this is that you need to have some sort of an experience working on Git and one of these servers, Git servers. It could be BitBucket, GitHub, or any of that. In case you don't, let me just quickly go through some of the small steps that is required in order to configure your BitBucket along with the Git client. Git is a server client kind of a configuration. So on the server side, you would need a BitBucket org registration. So in order to use BitBucket or in order to put up any repository on the BitBucket, you need to first register there. The registration is pretty simple. You just go there, browse on to bitbucket.org, provide your email ID and put in few more details, and you get an automatic registration that happens, and you get a free hosting service from BitBucket wherein you can put your repository out there. So once that is done, you need to download a Git client. This is a simple exe which you need to install on your client, and after you install this Git client, you need to generate a pair of SSH keys. There are a lot of tutorials which point you to the exact procedure required to create these SSH keys, but these are very simple. So you generate a pair of SSH keys, which is a public key and a private key, and you also provide a passphrase while you're generating this particular key. Also, one small configuration that needs to be done on the client is you need to configure the username and the email ID with which you're going to use your Git client. So after this is done, you need to establish a mechanism by which the BitBucket server and the Git client will authenticate themselves. For this, you'll have to take the keys that you generated on the client, the public key to be precise. You need to pull out that public key and paste it on the BitBucket server. So this is my BitBucket repository. So if I go to, let me go back. Okay, this is my user profile. If I go to BitBucket settings, all right, section called securities. Under the section security, you find this SSH key. Okay, I already have this set up on my system, so I'm not going to add one more, but in case you want to add, this is what you'll have to, this is the place where we copy the public key from your client and paste it out here and say add key. I've already done that, so I'm not going to do this again. However, let me just check if my repository setup is right. For this, I'm going to use a very small utility called the git bash. So git bash, and I'm going to check whether my setup looks good or not, because it's been a while since I used this setup. So let me just check if everything works well. SSH-T git at bitbucket.org. Okay, this asks for my passphrase. Yep. Okay, this let me in. Okay, so I'm all set with my client so that I can talk to this server. So what I do is I have a repository, a directory called repositories. This is where I put in all my Git code. So I'll cd to that particular repository. Okay. So there are two ways of creating a repository on the BitBucket. You can either do it from the client and then push it onto the server, or you could go to the server first, create a skeleton for your repository, and then come back to the client and then, push that particular settings. So I'm going to create a new repository here, create new repository. I'm the owner for that. CI demo. Okay. Yeah, I'll make this a private repository. I don't want anybody else to use this repository. And yeah, kind of repository is Git. It supports both Git and Mercurial. So for now, since we're going to use a Git repository, I'll let that Git check be done. And I'm saying create a repository. Okay, so this creates a repository for me. And then it also gives me the commands that is required from the client to push content into this repository. Okay, so there are two options where I already have an existing project, or I'm starting from scratch. Since I'm starting from scratch, let me click on this. Okay, so this gives me all the commands that is required for me to pull out this repository. So it says git clone. Let me just copy this. Okay. Please note that each of these repositories is identified by a unique URL. If you see this, git at bitbucket.org : my email ID or my username / the project name that I created or the repository name, and then .git. Okay, wonderful. So okay, here is my repository, CI demo. Okay, since I don't have anything in my repository, this was an empty repository, so it just says it's empty. But please note that there is a repository called, or there is a directory called .git. This is a hidden repository or hidden directory which contains all information that is required for the Git repository. Please do not fiddle around with this. By mistake, if you do something to this repository, to this directory or its content, be assured that your whole repository goes for a toss. Okay, now I've cleared this, I've created this repository, or rather I've cloned this repository onto my client. Let me just put in a few class files into this. So first one, I'll create a very simple hello demo kind of a thing. So notepad, I'll create a hello world kind of a thing. So hello world dot java. Yes, I want to create a new thing, and hello. Okay. Okay. So I'm just copying the simple hello world. Okay, just save this file. Okay, so I just created this hello world.java. So I will add this file to the repository. Git commit -m. Okay, then let me just go back. Okay, git push -u origin master. -u is just a flag so that it will associate the master branch on this local system to the master branch on the server that is going to create. And master branch is just the first by default branch that gets created whenever any repository gets created. Okay, so I just added a new Java file, checked those changes in, and I pushed it. So it created a new branch called master on the server. So all this while this code was on the client, now it should have come to the server. Okay, so if I refresh this page, okay, so I see my check-in that has come in, and if I go to sources, I will see this Java file that I pushed in. Okay, looks good. One thing that we forgot to do is to compile and see if this works well or not. So let me just see that if there's any compiler errors or something. Okay, so this looks good. So if I say Java hello world print, okay, perfect. Okay, please note that whenever you have any Java files or any Java related project you're working on in Git, all these compilations will create a lot of class files for you. So what you don't want is to mess up your repository by putting in this particular to retaining by this .class files. So let me put up a simple .ignore file so that my Git repository ignores all these class files that are generated, which are temporary files, and I don't need these files to be in my repository. So notepad.git ignore. Yes, Okay, so this is a file that is created. If at all I need to ignore any specific files, directories, or wild characters. So what I do is I don't want any of these .class files in my repository. So I do a star.class, I just save it, and I add this git commit -am added git ignore file to ignore class files. Okay, push -u origin. You don't need to keep on providing -u option, but that's what I'm used to. So okay, so let's try this again and see if the dot class gets picked up. Okay, please note that even though there is a dot class file here, git status says that it doesn't find any new file that has to be added in the repository. That is because we put in a .git ignore file and we asked git to ignore all files that end with a dot class. So we're good on this front. So all our files are here. We got 2 commits. Yes, .ignore files have come in here. So if I go to source, I should see 2 files. All right, that completes my first task of creating a repository and pushing it onto the BitBucket server. In the previous example, you saw that I was able to create a repository hello world on the BitBucket server and I pushed it onto the server. Now what I need to do is put on a very simple Jenkins job which will pull this particular repository and build it on the Jenkins server. So for that I need to run my Jenkins server, which is a simple war file, and the command to run it is java-jar. It's just a war file, so you just run it as java-jar and the name of the file. So once the Jenkins is running, mine is a default Jenkins configuration, so I haven't changed anything. It runs on port 8080 and comes up with a login and password, and this is the username and password with which I've created the admin user. So I log into my Jenkins server. So what I need to do is from this server I need to point to my repository and put in a very simple job to pull the particular repository contents and build it locally. So for that I'll open up a new item. I need to give a name for my job, so it could be anything. It's not related to the Java repository or anything like that. So I'll say CI job. Okay, I'll make it a freestyle project. Say okay. So I don't want any of these things. Yes, is it a, what kind of a source code is that? So my server is on Git, so I choose Git and I need to provide the URL. So there's 2 configurations that you can provide. One is the SSH configuration or the HTTPS. So I already configured my SSH keys with my Jenkins. I will not go into the details of that, but to connect them together, so I'm going to copy the SSH URL of this repository, which is my CI demo, and I'm going to tell Git that this is my repository that you need to pull contents from. Okay, and I need to provide a set of keys. So this is this, I hope. Okay, I had this username that is configured to pull out contents from this particular repository. So this is the setup that I have. And okay, build triggers. This is a one-time kind of a pull of jobs. So I'm not going to put any triggers. Build environments. I don't want anything on the environments. Okay, so once you pull the repositories, as you might have noticed, my repository was a simple Java file. Right, my repository consisted of a simple Java file. So whenever I pull my repository to build it, I don't have any complex Maven jobs or anything like that. I need to just do a java c hello world.java, and Java hello world will run my application. So I would say build steps, execute shell, or no, execute patch command because this is not a Windows box. I mean, what I have is a Windows box, so I don't have any shell here. So I'll say execute Windows patch command, and what I'm going to run. The first command should be javac hello world dot java, and after that java hello world. Okay, so that's about it. So I say save and I do build now. Okay, let me just do console output and see what's happening. Oh, all right, there you go. So it runs a few commands, and then based upon the username and credentials that I've provided, it logs into my repository. It pulls this particular content onto my repository, and then it does a javac hello world, and it runs the Java program, and I see hello world here. Okay, so that completes the second part of my demo. In the previous sessions, you saw that I was able to build a repository on the BitBucket and configure a Jenkins job to pull this repository. But the task is kind of half complete because what we now have is a kind of a pull job. So this is my job. I've already built it once. So whenever I need, I can build this. But that's not the whole point of CI or continuous integration. So what I should have as a part of my demo is an automatic way of executing this particular job as and when a code is pushed to the repository. Okay, so let's get back to that and try to do whatever is required for that. Okay, so there are two things that is required for configuring BitBucket and Jenkins using a webhook. The first one is Jenkins would need a BitBucket plugin so that it can talk to BitBucket, or it can listen to the push that is going to come in from BitBucket using a webhook. So for Jenkins and BitBucket to talk to each other, Jenkins would need a BitBucket plugin. So let's go to our server and check if at all you have a, or rather if at all I have a BitBucket plugin. So I go to manage Jenkins, I go to manage plugins, and I'll see available. The UI is a little hard for you to understand, but you'll get used to it once you start using it extensively. So I need the BitBucket plugin. Okay, so let me just check. Yeah, this is the plugin that I need to integrate Jenkins and BitBucket. So it's not installed, so I just go here and say install without a restart. This is installing the BitBucket plugin. Only after I have this plugin, my Jenkins will be in a position to talk to or listen to the callbacks from BitBucket. So it got installed successfully. So let's go and check here what we need to do. So I go to my CI job. I will say configure. Okay. So as I said, nothing changes here. The name of the project or something like that. This is Git. I only need to have a, yes, a build trigger. So when we don't have this plugin, you will not see this option. So this is like, a trigger which will build it whenever there is a change that is pushed to BitBucket. You will see this option only after you install the BitBucket plugin. So let me click that, and that's about it. I don't need to do anything else here in my BitBucket. Sorry, in my Jenkins. Okay, so that took care of my BitBucket plugin on Jenkins. So now I need to configure a webhook on the BitBucket server. So go back to my BitBucket server, and there is settings, and pipeline settings, not pipeline, where is it? Okay, in the workflow you see something called as a webhook. Okay, so this is the place I need to add a webhook, right? I will say this is just a webhook or Jenkins webhook, and I need to provide a URL. This URL should be some IP address or DNS which my Jenkins, which is there on bitbucket.org, will or can call upon. But as you see, my Jenkins is running on my local host. So there's no way for my cloud Bitbucket to communicate with my local host, because my local host is running on an IP which is within my home network. So for this, I need my wonderful utility called ngrok. So this is just you can go to ngrok and download this exe file. No need to install this. Okay, so I have this ngrok file here, and I just need to run ngrok, and there are two parameters that I need to pass. First is I need to tell him what is the kind of port that you want supposed to open up to, and what kind of traffic will be available on that port. So I will have to type in ngrok minus http port, and the port number is 8080 because that's the port on which my Jenkins is running. So I just say ngrok http and port is 8080. Okay, so what this wonderful utility does is that it has created two publicly available URLs which will create a tunnel, and anybody using the hitting this particular URL will be able to communicate with my locally hosted HTTP 8080 port. That is where my Jenkins is running. So you see there are two ports, one is HTTP port and HTTPS port. So if I click on this, copy it, and possibly I'll use another browser to check whether if I can communicate with this particular this is bad. Okay, that was okay. That didn't take a long time. All right, so if you see, I am typing in a URL or an IP address which is on the cloud or which is available publicly, and what this internally does is like my ngrok has created a tunnel to log into my or to connect to my Jenkins that is hosted on my local IP. So this is what we need. So this is the URL that I need to inform Jenkins, or rather my BitBucket, to talk to. So this is the URL, and there's one other small thing that I need to specify, which is the BitBucket -hook. BitBucket -hook and /. Okay, so now I'm providing BitBucket a URL. This URL is actually my Jenkins that is locally running URL, but thanks for ngrok, I've created a kind of a available or publicly available IP address for my Jenkins server. So this is that server /bitbucket -hook. This is the standard stuff. You can't change this, followed by a /. This has to be the same way this is, and but this, when you have to configure this, would be equivalent of your ngrok that you're going to run. If you have your Jenkins that is running on a publicly available IP, or if you're running within an enterprise environment and your cloud hosted Jenkins or your cloud hosted BitBucket can talk to your Jenkins server, no need to specify this. Okay, and there are various triggers that you can kind of configure. There's a big list of triggers on which you can call in the webhook. For now, we'll just keep this very simple. We will say whenever there's a repository push that is happening to this particular repository, this is my repository, my CI demo repository, then just call back this guy. All right, I do a save on this. Okay, this is added. Let's check if this works or not. So how do I check that? My workspace is all configured here. My job is there. It's got run 2 times. I'll keep it to this page, and what I'll do is I will open up my Java program. That was bad. Okay, and then put in a new line and save that changes and push it to the server. Okay, I sincerely hope this triggers an automated build. Git status, I've modified a file. Okay, so I say git add dot git commit -am and I say changed hello world to trigger automated build. Okay, I've just committed it now. I haven't posted it. Let me also open up this guy just in case, to check whether this guy will trigger a build. Okay, please see that there are two builds that is already run. So I'll do a git push -u origin and master. Ask for my passphrase, new for today. Okay, you see this? There's a BitBucket hook that got triggered, and as soon as that is triggered, you see this job that is kicked off automatically. I didn't do anything on my Jenkins instance. There's a job that got triggered. Console output. See what's happening here. All right. There you go. So what we essentially ended up doing was we had this BitBucket repository. So whenever any code got checked in here, we had this webhook that called our Jenkins server, and we had this automated build happening. Anytime you want to push anything more into this BitBucket server, each one of them will create a automated or will automatically create a build of the Jenkins server. I hope this tutorial was useful for you, and thanks a lot for watching this.